I stood at the edge of our living room, my heart pounding as I watched them. Sophie Lane was close to my husband, James Carter, the energy between them palpable, a quiet current that filled the space. James glanced at me, uncertainty flickering in his hazel eyes, but Sophie kept him steady, her gaze unwavering, guiding him with a calm assurance that both intrigued and unsettled me. Emma Carter felt a pull to step forward to be part of what was unfolding, to shed the role of observer I had planned to play. This was James's birthday gift, a bold gesture born of love and curiosity. But now I realized I was ready to be more than a bystander, to dive into the experience I had orchestrated. Our marriage had always been a tapestry of contrasts. James, the steady architect, with a love for structure and routine. Me, a graphic designer with a penchant for spontaneity and colour. We met 12 years ago at a friend's art gallery opening in Seattle, where James's quiet charm and thoughtful questions about my work drew me in. We fell in love quickly, building a life in our cosy craftsman home, its wide windows and hardwood floors, a canvas for our shared dreams. But over time the vibrancy of our early years had softened, dulled by the demands of work, and the quiet creep of familiarity, James's long hours at the architecture firm, and my freelance projects, left us little time to nurture the spark that had once defined us. We still loved each other deeply, but I craved something more. A way to reignite the passion, to push the boundaries of our connection. The idea for James's birthday gift had come to me months earlier during a late-night conversation with my friend Claire, a free-spirited writer who never shied away from bold ideas. Over glasses of wine at our favourite downtown bar, I confessed my desire to surprise James, to give him something unforgettable. What about hiring someone? Claire suggested, her eyes glinting with mischief. A professional, someone who can make it extraordinary. At first I laughed it off, but the idea took root, growing in the quiet moments when I felt the weight of our routine. I wanted to give James something daring, something that would shake us out of our comfort zone, and maybe, just maybe, awaken a part of myself I'd buried. A week before James's 38th birthday, I met Sophie Lane at a discreet coffee shop on the outskirts of the city. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked, studying her closely, trying to read something beneath her calm exterior. She was striking tall, with dark hair pulled into a loose bun, her green eyes sharp and attentive. She didn't flinch. 6 years. Maybe 7, she replied, her voice steady, a faint smile playing on her lips. She sat with her legs crossed, hands resting easily in her lap, exuding confidence and comfort. No nerves, no performance, just quiet control that put me at ease and intrigued me all at once. "And you don't mind being watched?" I pressed my eyes, narrowing slightly, testing her boundaries. Her gaze held mine, unflinching, a spark of amusement in her expression. "Not at all. I like when someone's paying attention." I let her answer, linger, feeling the heat behind her words, a subtle challenge that sent a shiver through me. "Do you ever work with couples?" "Plenty," she said, her tone matter-of-fact, but it always depends on who's really in charge. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her perceptiveness. "And who do you think that is?" "You," she replied without hesitation, her eyes locking onto mine. "Definitely you." Her certainty made me smile, a small private curve of my lips that felt like a victory. I shifted in my seat, my legs uncrossing the hem of my dress, sliding higher, intentional or not. I wasn't sure Sophie noticed, but didn't comment. Just waited her patience. A quiet invitation. "And if I only want to watch?" I asked, my voice low, testing her further. "Then I'll make sure you don't miss anything," she said, her voice soft but weighted her words, landing with an unexpected intensity that made my pulse quicken. I took a breath and stood, my movements smooth and deliberate, my heels meeting the hardwood floor softly. I walked to my bag and pulled out an envelope containing the agreed-upon payment, the paper crisp in my hands. Turning to face her, I held it out. "What we discussed," I said, my voice steady. She took it with one hand, meeting my eyes without a word, her expression unreadable but attentive, as if she were measuring me. "I'll text you when to arrive." I added, my tone firm but warm. She nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Looking forward to it." She left a moment later. No rush, no goodbye, just a glance over her shoulder that lingered longer than necessary. A silent acknowledgement that set my pulse racing and left me wondering what I had set in motion. That night I lay in bed with James, his body moving against mine, steady and familiar. Our rhythm, a dance we had perfected over years of intimacy. His hands found my hips, grounding me, while my legs wrapped tighter around him, holding him close, my body responding to his every touch. I guided him with every breath, every slow grind of my body beneath his, my back lifting instinctively to chase the building tension. His lips brushed my throat, warm and soft, and I moaned quietly, one hand buried in his dark hair, the other flat against his chest, feeling the strength behind each motion. He was trying, giving everything, and I gave just as much, pouring myself into the moment, letting the connection between us deepen. I gasped when the tension broke tight and overwhelming, a sudden release that left me trembling, my breath catching in my throat. He followed with a soft groan, sinking into the sheets beside me, heat still radiating between us, our bodies entwined. We lay still, our lungs catching up the air thick and quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the city outside our window. "That was incredible," James said. Finally, his voice breathless, a smile in his tone. "Yeah," I murmured, a smile tugging at my lips as I nestled closer to him. "It was amazing." He turned his head, still catching his breath, his eyes warm and curious. Was that my early birthday gift? I kissed his shoulder, my lips lingering against his warm skin, the scent of him familiar and comforting. "No," I said, my voice soft but teasing, a spark of anticipation in my chest. "I've arranged something even more special for tomorrow." The next evening arrived in a blink, the golden light stretching across the hardwood floors of our living room, warm and low, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Sophie was already there, seated on the edge of our leather couch, ankles crossed, calm as ever. Her presence filled the room without effort, a quiet authority that demanded attention without a word. She wore a simple black dress, elegant but understated, her dark hair loose, now framing her face. She glanced toward the front door, her green eyes sharp. "Where is he?" "Still at work," I said, checking my phone, the screen glowing in the dim light. "He should be home any minute." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes studying me, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Did you tell him?" I shook my head, a small smile of my own. Forming. "Not yet. He's been guessing. All day, keeps texting me about dinner reservations, or a weekend getaway." That drew a quiet smile from her, measured and knowing, as if she understood the game we were playing. She leaned back, her arms resting loosely across the cushions, her posture relaxed, but attentive, as if she had done this 100 times before. "You really think he'll go for it?" "I don't think," I said, my voice steady, confident, a spark of certainty in my chest. "I know." The space between us settled into a low hum, not nervous, just expectant. The air thick with possibility. Sophie didn't ask more, just watched the light crawl slowly across the floor, her patience a contrast to the anticipation building inside me. I busied myself adjusting a vase on the coffee table. The clink of glass. A small distraction. But my mind was racing, replaying our conversation at the coffee shop. The way Sophie's confidence had both reassured and challenged me. Then came the sound of keys, the door swinging open with a soft creak. James stepped inside his bag slung over his shoulder tie. Loosened jacket, gone his shirt slightly rumpled from a long day. His eyes found Sophie instantly, and he stopped, the silence heavy. His expression a mix of confusion and curiosity. His gaze flicked to me, then back to her, his brow furrowing as he tried to piece it together. "Is this?" he began, his voice trailing off, uncertain. I nodded, stepping forward, my heels clicking softly on the hardwood. "She's your surprise, James," he blinked, processing his hand tightening on the strap of his bag. "You're serious?" "Completely," I said, my tone firm but warm, a smile tugging at my lips as I watched his reaction. Sophie stood, her movements smooth and confident, crossing the room to stop in front of him. Her presence was calm but focused, a quiet intensity in her posture that seemed to anchor the moment. James looked at me again, seeking confirmation, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and intrigue. I nodded once more, my gaze steady. "It's okay," I said softly, my voice reassuring. "She's here for you." Sophie's hand rose, brushing his cheek with quiet confidence. Her touch light, but deliberate. Her fingers grazing his jaw. Then, without a word, she leaned in and kissed him. Slow, simple, intentional. Her lips soft but sure. When they parted, James stood frozen still, processing his breath, shallow, his eyes locked on her as if trying to ground himself in the moment. I stepped forward and gently took his hand, my fingers intertwining with his, grounding him in our connection. As I led them both toward the bedroom, I leaned in and whispered, "This is your gift. Enjoy." The bedroom felt warmer than usual, the air thick with anticipation, the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting shadows across the walls. I settled onto the plush armchair across from the bed, my posture composed, legs folded neatly, every sense tuned to what was about to unfold. I hadn't said much since we stepped in, just enough to guide them inside, to remind James that this was his moment, and mine too, in a different way. Sophie stood close to him now, barely an inch of space between them, her hands moving to the front of his pants with calm confidence. Every movement was sure. No fumbling, no hesitation, just steady control that seemed to put James at ease. Her eyes lifted briefly to his, not asking, just anchoring him in the moment. Her gaze, a quiet command. James looked at me, a pause lingering, no words, but a silent question in his expression, his last check for reassurance. I nodded once, measured, uncertain, my gaze steady, conveying trust and permission. That was all he needed. Sophie guided him to sit at the edge of the bed, then lowered herself with practiced ease, her palm sliding along his thighs as she leaned in, her movements fluid and deliberate, and James let out a shaky breath, gripping the blanket as his head tilted back, his eyes drifting closed, his body surrendering to her touch. Whatever doubt he'd held dissolved, replaced by a quiet intensity that filled the room. Sophie's movements were intentional, unfaltering, adjusting with him, responding to every shift in his breath, every subtle cue, as if she could read his body like a map. A rhythm began to take shape, grounded and focused, holding him in place, each motion building on the last. I watched my own breath catching a soft pressure building inside me, gradual but insistent, a warmth that spread through my core. I shifted, adjusting my position, my hand resting on my thigh beneath the fabric of my dress, the silk cool against my skin. I didn't move. It just let it settle there, steadying myself against the rising tension, my pulse quickening as I took in the scene. After a moment, Sophie rose her hand, sliding upward along James's torso as she stood, then moving to the buttons of his shirt. She opened each one slowly, with the ease of someone familiar, with every step, her fingers deft and sure. Piece by piece, his clothing fell away until his chest rose and fell, freely under the room's warm light, his skin catching the glow. Then it was her turn. She undressed with graceful efficiency, nothing flashy, just quiet command in every movement, her dress slipping to the floor in a soft rustle. Each layer came away smoothly until nothing remained between them, her body a study in confidence and poise. She gently pressed James back onto the bed and climbed over him with certainty, her movements fluid and assured her body aligning with his. He didn't resist his hands finding her waist, tentative at first, then more certain. Sophie adjusted her stance, settling into a pace that matched the rise and fall of his breath, every shift deliberate, designed to connect, not dominate. She stayed focused, her attention fully on him, her body moving with a quiet intensity that seemed to draw him deeper into the moment. James's hands tightened at her waist, his head leaned back, his breathing growing deeper, his body sinking with hers, moment by moment. Their rhythm, a quiet symphony, a sound left me soft and involuntary, a quiet gasp that betrayed the need stirring within me. My hand now rested just beneath my dress, unmoving, but present, my fingers pressing lightly against the fabric. I wasn't detached. I felt everything, the build inside me, the heat under my skin, the desire that flared with every glance, every reaction. Watching wasn't enough anymore. The pull was growing, urging me to act, to bridge the distance between observer and participant. I pressed my knees closer together, my breathing shortening my body, responding to the intensity unfolding before me. Sophie leaned forward, bracing herself against James's chest, a deep sound coming from him, low and full, a sign of his surrender to the moment, his body alive under her touch. That was it. I rose from the armchair, slow and purposeful, my legs a little unsteady, not from nerves but from how long I'd held myself in place, restraining the urge to join them. I took a step, then another, my eyes staying on them as I crossed the space between us, the hardwood cool beneath my heels. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was part of this, drawn into the current they had created. I stopped at the edge of the bed, my pulse steadying, my eyes locked on the two of them. Sophie looked up from where she straddled James, composed and poised. But something in her softened. The moment our eyes met, a silent invitation. Without a word, she eased off him and rose to her feet, giving me the space she knew I needed. Her movements graceful and unhurried. I stepped forward and she met me halfway, her hands brushing my arms, then gliding gently down my sides, her touch light but intentional, sending a shiver through me. I leaned in and kissed her, not hesitant, not cautious, but warm and certain, a connection that felt natural, understood. Her lips were soft, responsive, and she returned the kiss fully, her body pressing softly into mine, a quiet acknowledgement of the shift between us. Together we turned to face James. He was still seated at the edge of the bed, his chest rising visibly, eyes wide following every motion, barely breathing his expression, a mix of awe and desire. We lowered ourselves in front of him, I on one side, Sophie on the other. Our movements synchronized without effort. Our fingers grazed once a fleeting connection that sparked warmth in my chest before we fell into rhythm, alternating, sinking naturally into a shared motion, moving together without words. My lips traced along James's skin with calm intention, following the familiar lines of his body, while Sophie's moved in a measured pattern, her touch precise and confident. When I paused, she leaned in, and when she shifted back, I took her place again. Our movements a seamless dance. James's muscles tensed, his legs braced, one hand gripping the blanket, the other clenched by his side. His whole body was alive under our attention, responding to every touch, and still we moved as one, fluid, practiced, instinctive, a shared rhythm that felt both new and inevitable. Eventually Sophie rose and extended her hand, her fingers warm and steady. I took it, and she helped me upright. Her touch, reassuring, grounding, she began to undress me one strap at a time, each piece falling with careful ease, the silk of my dress pooling at my feet. There was no rush in her movements, only quiet focus, a deliberate care that made my skin hum with anticipation. When I stood fully revealed, she leaned in and kissed me again. Slower this time, deeper, as if conveying something that didn't need words. A silent understanding of the moment we were sharing. I stepped back toward the bed, her gaze following mine, a spark of amusement in her eyes. When I reached the bed, I lay down, my heartbeat steady but full, my body alive with anticipation, every nerve attuned to the moment. Sophie lingered above her eyes on mine, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Couldn't keep just watching, huh?" she said, her voice teasing barely above a whisper, a playful challenge that made me laugh softly. I smiled, my voice soft, matching her tone. "I just wanted a better view." She moved between my legs and lowered herself with deliberate grace, her mouth finding me gently, each movement anchored and sure, her touch a quiet promise. My head fell back as her rhythm deepened, not rushed, not shy, just intentional, each motion building on the last, drawing me deeper into the sensation. I reached for the edge of the sheets, grounding myself in the wave rising steadily beneath my skin, a tide that grew with every moment pulling me under. Then I saw James. He climbed onto the bed behind Sophie. His movements measured, his eyes locked on us, dark with desire. He placed his hands at her waist, and slowly they began to move together, their rhythm taking shape, a quiet harmony that resonated through the room. I could feel it subtle at first, then more defined, a connection that flowed through Sophie to me. Each motion she absorbed from him reflected in how she moved against me, her pace adjusting her focus, sharpening her breath, landing warm on my skin. Her body aligned perfectly with his, a conduit for the energy between them, and the result was a wave flowing directly into me, steady, continuous, growing. The pressure inside me rose, not a gradual build-up, but a relentless momentum, a force I couldn't resist. My legs pulled closer. My grip on the sheets tightened, and when it overtook me it came fast, sharp and complete. A release that left me trembling, my breath escaping in a rush, every nerve alive with sensation. Sophie stayed with me through every second of it, her touch steady grounding her presence. A quiet anchor. Only once I settled did she lift her head, her eyes meeting mine with a faint knowing smile. Behind her, James's breathing had grown ragged, his movements losing their precision, now driven by urgency, his body taut with need. He leaned forward at last, his forehead resting near her shoulder, his entire frame coming to stillness, his release following close behind, a low groan escaping him. Sophie eased aside, slow and calm her movements, graceful even now, her poise unshaken. James shifted beside me, his breath catching in his throat, and let himself fall to the pillow at my side. His body warm against mine. His fingers found mine, warm and steady, and I gave them a gentle squeeze, a silent reassurance. He kissed me soft and lingering, his lips, a quiet "Thank you," his eyes warm with gratitude and love. I smiled, my breath still catching up, and whispered, "Happy birthday, James." He laughed softly, his voice hoarse but warm, a spark of humour in his eyes. "Best gift ever," he said, his hand tightening around mine. The days that followed were a delicate balance, a careful exploration of the new dynamic we had unlocked. James and I didn't speak about that night immediately, as if we both needed time to process its weight, to understand what it meant for us. I went through my daily routine, designing logos for clients meeting Claire for coffee, tending to the small garden in our backyard. But my mind kept drifting back to the intensity of that evening, the way it had shifted something fundamental within me. I wasn't ashamed, but I was curious, almost cautious about how it would shape our marriage moving forward. One evening as we sat at the kitchen table, the remnants of a homemade pasta dinner between us, James broke the silence. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft. His hand resting on mine, his thumb tracing small circles. I nodded, meeting his eyes searching for any sign of regret. "Are you?" He exhaled, a small smile tugging at his lips, a flicker of relief in his expression. "Yeah, I think so." It was intense, more than I expected. But it felt right, you know, because it was with you. I squeezed his hand, my heart swelling with gratitude. It didn't feel like we were losing each other, I said, my voice steady, honest. It felt like we were exploring together, like you were part of it even when I was watching. He nodded, his eyes softening, a quiet understanding passing between us. I am. But I need to know. Did it give you what you wanted? I thought about it, letting the question settle. That night had been a release, a chance to push boundaries and explore a part of myself I hadn't fully acknowledged. But more than that, it was about trust. about James's willingness to embrace something unconventional, for the sake of our connection. It did, I said finally, my voice firm, but only because it was with you, because we did it together. He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me, his warmth enveloping me. I'm glad, he whispered, his lips brushing my forehead. For the first time in months, I felt truly at peace, as if we had ventured into uncharted territory and emerged stronger, more connected. But life has a way of complicating even the most profound moments. A week later, I met Claire for lunch at a bustling cafe downtown. The clatter of plates and hum of conversation, a lively backdrop. Claire, ever perceptive, tilted her head as we sat down, her eyes narrowing. "You're different," she said, her voice curious, teasing. "Spill, what's going on?" I laughed, trying to deflect my fingers, fidgeting with the edge of my napkin. "Just busy with work, you know. New client projects." She raised an eyebrow, unconvinced, her grin widening. "Nope, it's more than that. You're radiant, but also, I don't know, like you've got a secret. Come on, Emma Dish." I hesitated, my fingers tracing the rim of my water glass, the condensation cool against my skin. Claire was open-minded, but explaining that night felt like exposing a fragile part of myself. "James and we tried something new for his birthday," I said, vaguely, testing the waters. It was intense, but it brought us closer. Her eyes widened, a spark of intrigue lighting up her face. "Oh, you have to tell me more. What kind of new are we talking about? Don't leave me hanging." I shook my head, smiling despite myself, a flush creeping up my neck. "Let's just say we pushed some boundaries and came out stronger. It was unexpected, but good." Claire leaned back, her expression a mix of amusement and admiration, her fingers drumming lightly on the table. "Well, damn, Emma. Good for you. Most couples wouldn't have the guts. Just be careful, okay? That kind of thing can stir up all sorts of feelings." Her words lingered, a quiet warning that echoed in my mind. That night, as James and I lay in bed, the city's hum filtering through the open window, I turned to him, my voice soft. "Do you think we'll do it again?" He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm, his touch soothing. "Do you want to?" he asked, his tone neutral, leaving the decision to me. I didn't know. Part of me craved the intensity, the rush of that night, the way it had made me feel alive, seen whole, but another part wondered if it was a moment best left untouched, a singular experience that didn't need repeating. Maybe I said my voice tentative, but only if we're both sure I don't want to risk what we have. He kissed my forehead, his lips lingering, his touch a quiet promise. "We won't. Whatever happens. It's you and me always." Over the next few months we settled into a new rhythm, a renewed sense of connection that felt both familiar and fresh. My design business thrived with a new contract for a local startup that reignited my passion for creating. James's firm landed a major project, easing the stress that had weighed on him, and he started coming home earlier. His smile brighter. We laughed. More planned weekend hikes in the mountains, rediscovered the joy of being us. But the memory of that night never fully faded. It was a secret we carried, a moment that had tested and strengthened us. A touchstone we returned to in quiet moments. Occasionally I'd catch James looking at me with that same awe from that evening, his eyes tracing the lines of my face as if seeing me anew. And I'd feel a rush of gratitude for a partner who saw me, all of me, and loved me enough to let me explore. One evening, as we walked home from dinner, the Seattle skyline glittering against the night sky, James took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, a hint of a smile in his tone, "I never thought I'd be okay with something like that. But seeing you so alive, so completely yourself, it changed how I see us. It made me love you more." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. The city's energy pulsing around us. "It changed me too," I said, my voice soft but certain. "But only because it was with you, because you trusted me." He stopped walking, pulling me close, his arms wrapping around me as the cool night air brushed against my skin. "I always will," he said, his voice low, a vow that settled into my bones. We didn't need to say more. That night had been a leap into the unknown, a test of trust and love that could have broken us, but instead made us stronger. It wasn't about satisfying every desire or erasing every doubt. It was about facing them together, about choosing each other even in the face of the unconventional. As we walked on the city humming around us, I felt complete, not because every need was fulfilled, but because I had James, a partner who saw me, held me, and let me be, no matter where our journey took us.